right. Shalom. I want to begin by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there, and as always, you believers. So yeah, I'm back once again through the spirit and power of Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai. As always, continuing in the spirit and theme of prophecy, which pretty much gives us the inspiration, if you will, to speak upon these weighty matters that's taking place here on the planet Earth, and chiefly things pertaining to this change of worlds, where this current system governed over by the powers that be, obviously being Esau, the so-called white man, as well as his companions, meaning the other nations, hence your EU, your UN, and all of its interchangeable parts will ultimately be moved out of the way to make room for the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven, a new system which will incorporate the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High in the earth, hence bringing about a world of righteousness. And that's pursuant to the book of 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, where those will be weighty matters in which one can only tap into subscribing to the spirit of prophecy. You got these different groups out there, and I'm not speaking about generally, because when you consider the Bible, it's actually a top seller. You'll find a Bible everywhere throughout the landscape of America. But as it pertains to these Israelite groups, for the most part, they use the Bible as a front, if you will, but basically they promote everything but prophecy. You have men who use the ministry for filthy lucre. They merchandise it. You got those who teach with a world-friendly twist. You have others who create a forum of debate. They basically YouTube sensations. They coexist with these different YouTube personalities. And the bridge is the scriptures. They actually use that as a promotion ploy. You have others who teach for envy and strife and contention. Oh, here at this church, on Saturdays, of course, we go out and camp, and we split up the camps into two camps. And the brothers who teach on the side street adjacent to us, basically they was confronted with a guy, he walked up, he saluted the camp, and he went right into questioning the validity of the sign, proving that he wasn't desiring prophecy. At a time like this, you got the kings of the earth. Tension is at an all-time high with these world leaders. The infrastructure is in play for the next phase of these devils, and they plan to remain on the power seat. Yet you got guys who looking to teach for contention. And not just him, I'm just singling him out, as for a sake of argument, if you will. But again, across the landscape of these Israelite groups, they don't desire prophecy. They don't covet prophecy, which really it was commanded for us to desire these words. Because when you read Revelation, the 5th chapter, it goes into the science of Yahweh Shai shedding his blood, in which he did it to loose the seals. That's why John wept bitterly, because there was no man found worthy to open the book. So Yahweh Shai's sacrifice was a heavy moment. It preceded this time that we're in now, where we will be given access. That's why when he was crucified, it tells you how the temple rent, which symbolized what? Giving us access to the Holy of Holies in the temple. Well, now this is spiritually played out by being able to tap into this book. So really, you are commanded to desire to hear these words. You are to covet prophecy. Matter of fact, let's begin with that real quick. What's that? The book of 1 Corinthians. First Corinthians, the 14th chapter. I believe it's around the 40th verse. And you can see this heading right here, prophecy, a superior gift. See? So this is what pleased the Most High, as it is written, it pleased the Heavenly Father through the foolishness of preaching, which we know that word preach complements prophesying. So this is the book of 1 Corinthians 14. And I started the 37th verse. It reads, if any man think himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things that I write, and this is the Apostle Paul speaking, unto you are the commandments of the Lord. See? So the Apostle Paul said, look, if you claim to be spiritual, then acknowledge that everything I write is really commandments. Let's read this again. It says, if any man think himself to be a prophet or spiritual, see, let him acknowledge that the things that I write unto you are the commandments of the Lord. See? So now let's see what one of these commandments is. It says, but if any man be ignorant, let him be ignorant. Oh, and that's another thing. Here at Great Millstone, we're not trying to convince. Now, the scripture do say convince the gainsayers, but that's going to be based upon our works. For an example, this was years back. It was a guy that was a scoffer. I forget his handle and all that. But he was perceived to be a scoffer. He was stiff-necked Jake, and he was butting up against the teachings. But as time progressed, he came around. See? But it wasn't because I was singling him out and trying to convince him. It was ultimately the Lord put the Spirit on him, and he watched the videos. And in that event, through the Spirit, I persuaded the gainsayer. So that's going to happen. You're going to have those amongst the elect who are somewhat pessimistic in a sense. But ultimately, they're going to come around because it's written for that particular individual story to play out that way because it's documented. But ultimately, if the Lord stripped you from those instincts of seeing and hearing, and he took away that ultimate, most preferred spirit, if you will, and that's discernment, then we're going to let you be ignorant, man. See? Verse 39, and it's the point. It says, wherefore, brethren, covet to prophesy and forbid not to speak with tongues. Let's read this again. It says, wherefore, brethren, covet to prophesy. And again, you see what this is actual commandment. See? So you're encouraged to desire. Let's click on this word covet, because pretty much that's what that word goes into.
Strong's G 2206. Zelao. Zelao. Thayer's Lexicon, related entry. Zeluo. Zeluo.
So it says to burn with zeal. Yeah, so you got to be on fire about this. Not just as it applies to those of us who teach, but those of you believers out there as well. It shouldn't really be a chore for you to tap into, these lessons and be occupied in some capacity in the ministry. You see, you got certain of those out there who might be helpers or whatnot. Whatever office you was given, do it with a certain have a fervent approach. See? Which, when you go into the concept of burning or being on fire, it really goes back to focus. Really, that word, when you go into that word focus, it goes into fire. Like focus, that means you're concentrating. That's where you get the term, like a concentrated fire. So when you're concentrating, you beaming in. That it takes energy. You really burn energy when you focus in. See? So that's what we're encouraged to do. So if you focused, that really means you're on fire. It says to be heated, see, or to boil with envy, hatred, anger. In a good sense, to be zealous in the pursuit of good. So this mainly applies to this definition A right here mainly applies to the point. See, in a good sense, to be zealous in the pursuit of good. To desire earnestly. See that word covet go back to desire. To desire earnestly, pursue. Because when you desire to hear these words, when you earnestly desire the testimony of Yahweh, that's likening to you pursuing him. See? It says to desire one earnestly. To strive after. Yeah, because there's a lot of resistance. You know, even I know speaking from the perspective of those of us who teach this word, a lot of time you met with a lot of resistance. So it's a fight. You striving. See, you had to go through a lot of things. Some things might be bigger than others, minuscule things. Yet there's things in front of you in which the Lord, he expects you to fight through. You see? Because that shows that you desire him. See? Busy oneself about him. See? Busy oneself about him. To exert oneself for one, that he might not be torn from me. Yeah, because you want to be associated, aligned, you know, you cleave to Yahweh through Yahweh. And again, it's easy for me to say that. We could easily say, you know, you got to hold fast to the Lord. Well, someone might say, well, how do I do that? And that's why we're here, to give you the answers through the Spirit. How do you cleave to the Lord? By cleaving to these teachings. See, scripture say, let not the parables of understanding escape thee. It says to be the object of the zeal of others, to be zealous, sought after, to have warmth, a feeling for or against. Yeah, so you showing, you have the hots, if you will, for the Lord. See? But it can only be done by what? Covet and prophecy. See? Let's read this again. It says, wherefore, brethren, covet to prophesy. See that? So this is an actual commandment. And again, any of you out there who are not in that spirit of prophecy, but you can't lay that at the feet of great millstone, beginning at the apostles and elders. Even Chat GPT, when you summon up that's an actual demon. When you summon it up and you ask it a question, right, it give you an accurate answer. Well, ask Chat GPT amongst all the Israelite groups who are known for prophesying. And they're going to tell you straight up and down, great millstone. See? So this is the main objective. Prophecy. And the Lord raised up the prophets of old. Matter of fact, that's actually in here as well. 1 Corinthians 14. Yep, and 32. It says, and the spirit of the prophets are subject to the prophets. So the ancient prophets that we read about, the Lord raised up, entrusted them with the prophecies, and brought them forth to speak on behalf of the heavenly kingdom. And if you subscribe to that, and I know it sounds like, we preaching to the choir at this point, but it's facts, right? The Lord raised up his men to basically serve as that presentation, a resemblance of the kingdom of heaven. And for those whose interest is piqued by it, that means that you're actually in the company of the prophets, making you in the company of Yahweh Shah, and ultimately being in the company of the Most High himself. Let's prove that. This is Luke, the 10th chapter. In the 16th verse, it says, he that heareth you, heareth me. These are the words of Yahweh. And he that despiseth you, despiseth me. And he that despiseth me, despiseth him that sent me. So we see here the chain of command, the ordinance from the throne of the Most High. And in that order, you're directly placed into the company of the Most High. See, was that Ecclesiastes, the 5th chapter? Scripture speaks about those who come into the house of the Most High and how you are to, matter of fact, you know what, let's get that. I don't want to butcher it. Ecclesiastes 5 and 1, it says, keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of the Most High. And we know that the house of the Most High is not in the form of these harlot houses, these churches. No, this the house of the Most High. As Yahweh spake concerning this matter, where two or more are gathered in my name, so am I in the midst. See? It says, keep thy foot when thou goest into the house of the Most High, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. For they consider not that they do evil. So when you come into this arena, you're being taught. So in that event, you have to apply the old saying, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It says, be not rash with thy mouth, see? And let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before the Most High. Let's read this again. It says, be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before the Most High. For the Most High is in heaven, and thou upon the earth. Therefore, let thy words be few. So how could this be? How could you utter a thing before the Most High, yet he's in heaven? Well, simply put, when you come before his men, and we just read that in Luke the 10th chapter. See that? And how do you know who his men would be? They would covet prophecy. Matter of fact, let's go there. That's why Jake is being prepared for the slaughter. You know, they into scandal, into drama. They don't want to hear prophecy, man. Right? You see certain videos that might come out dealing with, drama, and it'll get countless of views. But the weighty matters, things pertaining to the pulse of the planet Earth right now, you'll be hard pressed to find Jake desiring to hear that. They don't want to covet that because really they was designed to be destroyed. That's why the Lord took away that attention span, so to speak. Oh, and it goes back to the point I made through the Spirit. Focus. When you focus, you're on fire. See? Oh, that Spirit. Sirach 44 and 1. It says, let us now praise famous men. Let us now praise famous men and our fathers that begot us. And this precept here is multifold. Right? From one perspective, we praise our forefathers, going back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For an example, you come into this thing, then you align yourself with a particular tribe. You might say, look, I'm of the tribe of Judah. Well, in a sense, you praising your forefather. See? But from a spiritual perspective, your fathers who begot you are the men who you learn from. See? Because why? Through the Spirit, the Lord chose that vessel to birth you. That's how you was born again. See? Again, it says, let us now praise famous men and our fathers that begot us. See? So you was begotten, right? You might came in, listen to, the brothers in LA, or a particular brother in a certain camp, Texas or Atlanta. Well, through that teaching, you was begot. You was born again. See? It says, such as did bear rule in their kingdoms, men renowned for their power, giving counsel, see, giving counsel by their understanding, and declaring prophecies. See that? Let's read this again. It says, such did bear rule in their kingdoms, men renowned for their power, giving counsel by their understanding and declaring prophecies. See? So this is what makes them worthy of praise. And you see the emphasis on prophecies, which in this lesson, we're going to get into that. As you can see, it's simply entitled Prophecy, because this is the centerpiece, if you will, the anchor to our belief system. Because ultimately, right, you believe in the return of Yahweh, then that's pretty much the glue that keeps you here. See? That's the driving force that keeps you engaged. See? To keep you to continuing on that path. See? It all centers around prophecy. Matter of fact, staying in the book of Sirach, the 39th chapter, Sirach, the book of Sirach, but now in the 39th chapter, and starting at the first verse, it says, but he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, which goes back to what? Focus. See? Will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient. And again, the ancient is the men who scribe the scriptures, and those men was regenerated back into the earth. If you can receive it, right? This is only for those of you who can dance to that song. You understand the concept of reincarnation. So those men will be back in their lot to expound on these writings. That's why I said what? He will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, see, and be occupied in prophecies. See that? So again, prophecy is the focal point. It's the mainstay, so to speak, which opens you up into the wondrous works of the Most High and his overall plans, which I mentioned at the head of the video, is to usher in a new kingdom. And that's going to come at the expense of the removal of this kingdom, in which we know will be all cemented by the prophecies. See? So now, with that established, I got a few articles lined up, some in video form. Well, I got one here in video form. And you know what? Let's start with that one. See, prophecy is having its place in the planet Earth, and that's nothing more than what? Yahweh Shah making his presence felt. See? Man, what we're a part of, this is, you can't really tab it with a title. This is beyond me and all of us, because we're experiencing the Most High work, as it is written, revive thy work in the midst of the years. So that same ancient power, if you will, which he's alive yesterday, today, and forever, right? What's that? Revelation, the first chapter, he who is, he who was, and he who is to come, as it relates to Yahweh Shah. Well, that power is alive and well and active, man. And it's interesting, to say the least, as you see all of this swarming activity, right, taking place in the earth from every genre, from the financial spectrum, the farming institution, the kings of the earth, wars, uprising of the people, right? Oh, even the wild beasts changing their place. Oh, it was a wild story of this guy. He fell from a cliff. He was an actual he was a priest, one of these Roman Catholic priests, younger guy, up and coming priest or whatever, and he fell from a cliff or some shit. He fell from a high place. He was still alive, but when he fell, he started a grizzly bear. The grizzly bear tore him, ripped him to pieces, man. That was like a strange wonder. See? But that was ultimately the Most High working, man. And a lot of people, they see these same stories that we come across. They are informed with the same articles and videos, right? News beat, but yet they don't understand that it's all orchestrated by a higher power. But we have been given the instincts to see that these things are not coincidental. In fact, they're calculated, and they serve as the many tokens that Yahweh sound away. And it's no different with this video clip. All right, so check this out. Right, so you see, right, uh, these devils is pretty much fulfilling, matter of fact, you know what? Let me go back here. Give me a thumbs up. Did y'all hear that clip? If you heard it, if not, let me run it back. Okay, Khan, the water. Let me run it back. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can hear it now. Okay, it's not playing. I don't know what's up with that. Let me see. Well, let me try something else here. I might have to. Give me a second. I might have to. Maybe it'll play from here.
Some kind of brain machine interface. You know, I think some kind of brain machine interface that can give you cybernetic superpowers. I think is probably good. It could help people that have brain or spine injuries. Restore, enable people who've never spoken for years to speak again, which we've done. Give people eyesight who have lost both eyes of the optic nerve, or maybe have never even seen at all, blind from birth. By direct interface to the optical centers in the brain, you can actually restore eyesight, or give people eyesight that they've never had before. And you can enable people to walk again, which I think is profound. I mean, these are kind of Jesus level things, like let's say like when technologies are hitting like Jesus level miracles, that's pretty good.
Right. So you see, this guy is likening those miracles, the miracles of the beast, to Jesus-like miracles. See, that's an indicator. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick. All right, yeah. So this is Isaiah 47. And 10, it says, "For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge," their technology, "it have perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and no one else beside me." So you see them hinting at that now through their technology, these different tech guys who are the face of Esau's, wisdom and knowledge, which have perverted him. And he have a God complex. See? But that's not even the nuts and bolts of it, which when you go to 2 Thessalonians, let's get that real quick. 2 Thessalonians 2. In 9, it says, "Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders." So you see where those characteristics are now becoming a stigma to this particular character. That's prophecy, man. See? And as I was about to mention before I got this precept, that's not even the be all end all why I really featured that clip. Really, I featured it because it gives credence to what we teach. We teach the MOTB. It's not as if we teach that and the momentum concerning that technology is fading away or waning. No, it's becoming more and more up close and personal. See? So that proves that we must be sanctioned by the Most High. And again, we're not trying to convince or persuade any of you doubters out there, those of you who are driven by your incredulity and unbelief. No, this is only to comfort those of you who do believe. So you can see that you're on the right path. You chose the right exit plan out of it. And the Lord showing us these things is actually a form of comfort. See? Because the Lord could have easily had it where everything that we saying didn't complement real time. But as it were, as we continue to expound on World War III, what's happening? You see the kings of the earth becoming more and more unsettled. As we continue to speak about the MOTB, that system, you see more and more where that technology is being brought up. You see it in your everyday walk. Or I was at the supermarket and the cashier really couldn't count, man. They couldn't, and that ain't the first time I seen that. It's funny, man. A lot of these people, they're so indoctrinated into this system, especially a lot of these younger Chaldeans, Babylonians. They have a malfunction when they have to physically make change for a 20 or you give them a big bill. They malfunction. Why? Because hey, that's the indicator that the system is already in play, man. The digital system where you just basically with the wave of a hand, and that's where you really get that term, the wave of the future. With the wave of the hand, you're able to conduct business, buy and sell, enter in certain places to get clearance into certain places, man. So that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to feature this clip. See, because we're in that time. I believe I was just looking at some as well where someone just received a brain implant. It went successful. So the prophecies are accomplishing what they were set out to do, as it is written. Have the Lord spake and not done it? See that? So let's move along, because I got a few little articles here. We're gonna try to go rapid fire. But again, you see the theme. What's the title of the lesson? Prophecy, man. See? And we ain't reaching here. Everything that we pull out, not just in this sitting, but overall with the prophets as a whole, it basically can be complemented, perfectly filtered through Bible prophecy, through the scriptures. So you see this title here: blackout fears erupt and 17 U.S. states are placed under power emergency. And where did you hear that? You heard that from the prophets, that you're going to have blackouts here in America. And you already have blackouts, because you have a channel or a link that's dedicated to blackouts, featuring blackouts in real time, which we featured it before in our lessons. I believe it was me and the brother Barack. We did a lesson where we featured the blackout chart, where you can witness it real time. So you got blackouts all the time, but rather they be in certain pockets or certain larger regions. Remember, you had the blackout up on the East Coast, I believe around 2000. It's going to be points where it's going to even stretch and be in a broader sense, but that falls under the banner of famine. Because you might have one to say, well, hold up, show me blackouts. And famine, blackouts fall under the banner of famine. Let's prove that real quick. What's that? Revelation. Yep, this is Revelation 18:7. It says, how much she have glorified herself and lived deliciously. And we know the lingo, we know that's dealing with America, this she. It says, so much torment and sorrow give her. So one of the orders from the Most High is to combat the pride of America with sorrow and torment. It says, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and I am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. So that's that pump spirit, that proud spirit in all of you Americans. And we can make such a statement because, what proved that? When you confront it with the real authority, with this word, you don't believe it. And it's driven by you more so trusting in America. It says, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord who judgeth her. So her destiny is to be burned with fire. We know that's going to manifest in the form of World War III. But prior to that, what's going to build up to the destruction? The plagues, which they're going to come in one day, death, mourning, and famine. Let's click on this word famine, because that word famine cover a lot of categories when you go into it. Say scarcity of harvest, famine. It says through the idea of destitution. When you destitute of something, you stripped of it. It's taken away from you. So that's not only in regards to food or drink. That applies to power as well. How do we know this? Well, let's click on this word scarcity. Let's see if we can. It says Scarcity is the basic economic, problem of having limited resources. See, so you could, Salakia. So you could throw, let me read this again. It says scarcity is the basic economic problem of having limited resources. See? To meet unlimited human wants and needs. And you can throw power in there. Driving choices, costs, and market values. Limited resources, supplies like time, money, and natural materials are, see here, people always desire more goods, service. Right, so you get the point. Scarcity, famine is scarcity of harvest. Meaning what? You're short of resources. See? That's a part of the judgments of the Lord. Where the Lord will begin to compromise the teeth, if you will. See? So that's one of the tokens. That's one of the prophecies. You're going to have blackouts. This is actually scarcity of harvest. These damn pop-ups. See that? Blackout fears erupt at 17 states are placed under power emergency. And that's going to be the norm here in America. Because again, Yahweh Shema is going to reduce that mirth to mourning. You Americans, and you Americans is, man, it's hard to bear you, man. See? You be around these people, man, they vex you at every turn. It says blackout fears are growing for 20 million Americans as extreme heat pushes the power grid towards its limits. Yeah, limited. We just looked up that word scarcity, right? It said your resources are limited. See? It says the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, on Sunday authorized the operator serving parts of 17 states. That's a lot of states. To activate idle power sources, to activate idle power sources in an effort to keep the lights on. So these are the times that we in. And the Lord not letting up, because when you read, I think that's 1 Samuel, the 3rd chapter, it tells you how the Lord didn't allow none of Samuel's words to hit the ground or to fall on the ground. Meaning he honored what Samuel said. Why? Because Samuel was simply conveying the words of the Most High himself. So you can push back against the doctrine that we bring forth, but it's going to be to no avail. It's pretty much nothing more than you kicking up against the pricks, because we just echoing what the Lord said. And we go to the scriptures as witness. So you don't have to believe. The scriptures say, what if some don't believe? Who cares, man? Do it makes the word of the Most High without effect? God forbid. See? It said the move allows backup plants that are normally switched off to generate extra electricity if surging demand threatens to overwhelm the grid. So the Lord have a plethora of ways to bring about, the evils. And again, it's calculated, it's strategic. It's an effort to bring about, to set in motion, if you will, that humbling stage of America. See? It says the emergency order covers Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana. It includes Nebraska, New Mexico, North Dakota, right? So Texas, Utah, Wyoming. So the whole Southwest Power Pool, the SPP, is being heavily leaned on. And when the power go out, that's going to provoke a lot of the wild beast to come forth. See? And what you expect, if you clicked on this live, you expected to hear us being optimistic. You can get out of here, man. We the bearers of bad news. See? All right, so I'm going to waste too much time on that. Let's move on. We have this tab. We got this. You know what? Let's get this. It says millions of eggs recalled over salmonella fears. And you already know what it is. It's like we bring this out every other live. Or the brothers, somebody mentioning this. Recalls. See? Now, whether those recalls being funneled to these underground bunkers, we don't know. Or it could be the results of this guy, Bill Gates. Remember, Bill Gates, he bought up 97% of the farmland and torched all the fields, slaughtered the livestock, all the dairy products. That's the sword, man. That's Esau. See? But whatever the case might be, who cares? We're a result-driven organization over here. So when the smoke clear, the fact remains is a recall. That's what it boiled down to. In this case, it's eggs, but I was looking at this earlier. Maybe I should have probably pulled it up, but it's been a spike in recalls, which is obvious. That's not some new revelation. If you've been paying attention, there's been a spike in recalls. Damn near everything you can think of, things that you weren't even considering. Certain shit you probably don't even shop for. That's being recalled. See, which that word recall, and I went into this the other night, that's a compound word, pretty much meaning to call back. So the Lord, this is a part of that process of humbling America as well. And this also obviously falls under the scarcity, the famine. See? So in this case, it's eggs, but this is across the board situation. See? This is from Forbes. It said food recalls are rising. Here's what consumers need to know. So that's the consensus, man. See? And that makes sense when concerning America. What do you mean by that? Because America is based on gluttons and that intemperate spirit, undisciplined. Food is at your fingertips. Or you had the World Games and all the nations who came over. The only thing they took from it is the food, man. Which this is the worst grade of food, but you know, you can get ice cream and all type of snacks. So the Lord basically snared you. He created a setting where, you know, food is literally at your fingertips. Or one of the brothers was touching on that during a couple of lives we streamed a few Sundays back of how, you know, you got DoorDash, you literally at the fingertip. That saying is actually a real saying. One having something at their fingertips, where you literally got that in America. So this is strategic. It'll make sense, right, for this to apply to a nation that's obese and, you know, you eat when you're happy, you sad. They call it comfort food. If it's a funeral, you eat. If it's a graduation, you eat. See? So you can see what this is detailed. This is intentional that you have recalls. And again, we don't care about the secret cabal behind the scenes that's doing it. This is just a result-driven thing on our behalf. We're just looking at the results. At the end of the day, when you crunch the numbers, the shelves are becoming empty. See? Now let's read a little into this. It says, for most of us, buying food has always been one of life's simplest routines. Yeah, over here in America. we think about it, it's like we think about what tastes good, what's healthy, what's affordable, or simply what's for dinner. We don't usually stop to wonder whether the food itself is safe. Lately, however, that seems to be changing. It says over the past year, in speaking with physicians, researchers, and wellness experts across a wide range of specialties, one theme have surfaced again and again. Lasting health is rarely built on the latest bio-block or wellness trend. Instead, it often comes from wellness habits that cost almost nothing. Eating nourishing food, staying hydrated, moving your body, getting enough sleep, and okay, they're gonna charge me to keep reading. But I mean, this is all we need. The headline says it all. See? So this is the norm. Recalls. What you think that's hinting at? It's hinting at food shortages altogether. See? So let's see what else we got here. It says China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea form axis of aggressors that could overwhelm U.S. Book warns. So they create an axis, axis. Salakia's taking a second to load up. It's like a delay. Let me read this again. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea form axis of aggressors that could overwhelm U.S. Book warns. And you could look no further than the scriptures. All of these players are merging. See? And their aggression, that aggression is going to be towards someone. It's towards you, the U.S., the whore. Was that where axis goes into that's pretty much like nations coming together to form. Matter of fact, let's just click on it. It's really nations coming together in league, in a sense. I said axis. Yep, it says a real imaginary straight line around which an object rotates, a reference line on a graph, or political alliances, or political alliances between countries, which has everything to do with biblical prophecy. Again, you could look no further than the Holy Scriptures. Matter of fact, let's go there. This is Revelation, the 17th chapter. This is Revelation 17 and 16. It says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire." So this is a dark sand for the destruction. And pretty much the nations is going to come together in some capacity, which Russia is not a part of that. But from an overall perspective, all the nations, matter of fact, let me get that real quick. All the nations is going to shoot at America. That's why that article spoke about the axis of these nations. And the spirit is highlighting, Russia, China, and North Korea, because when you look at those who possess those missiles, the capability to hit certain pressure points in the earth, chiefly America, Russia and China leads the pack. But remember, they got allies. See? So they all going to come together to shoot at America. Is that Jeremiah? Matter of fact, I believe that might be. Let's see what happens. Yep, it was Jeremiah 50. And it started the 14th verse. It reads, put yourselves in array against who? Babylon. Round about. See that? So all the nations is going to come up against America. It says, all ye that bend the bow, which is a form of saying all of you who possess the technology, the missiles. It says, all of ye that bend the bow, shoot at her. See? Spare no arrows, for she have sinned against the Lord. See that? It says, shout against her round about. It says, she have given her hand, her foundations are fallen, her walls are thrown down, for it is the vengeance of the Lord. See? Take vengeance upon her, as she have done, do unto her. So America, in its pursuit to power, left nothing but blood and carnage in the wake. You know the stat we often bring up? Out of the 300 or so years, I think 329 years, America has been in power. 323 of those years was occupied in war. And I know the percentage, it was staggering. It was 93% of the time. Meaning the only time they wasn't going to war, they was preparing for war. That other 7%. See? So the Lord said, look, do unto her as she have done. America's forte is war. And it makes sense. Why? Because this is Edom's kingdom. We know Esau, Edom, is referred to as the violent man in the scriptures. But again, what's the point? Everything that's taking place in the earth, you see, we ran through a series of articles. You know, we had one in video form as well. And almost effortlessly, right? We was able to filter it through the Holy Scriptures. See? Thus proving the validity of the Bible, man. This book reigns supreme, you know, especially when handled properly through the Holy Spirit. What happens? It unlocks the testimony of Yahweh Shai and the spirit of prophecy. It opens you up to the will of the Most High. And when that's accomplished, when you tap into that spirit, you see things different. You see everything that's taking place in the earth is complemented, if you will, by the word. So yeah, with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak, Wadash. Double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there, and as always, you believers. To the next time, shalom.